Let's get ready to rumble!
Hello and welcome to Netflix vs. Cinema, the podcast this week that is being pumped up and fired up by the Jacob Banks song, Move With You. So go ahead, go check it out. Great song, great song. My name is Tosin and I am your host up in the, not that far from where Jacob Banks is from actually. He's from Birmingham. I'm just outside Birmingham in Worcestershire, in a county called Worcestershire in the UK. Joining me as always on the Isle of Wight are Sharon Bollen.
Hello.
And Shaun Harris.
Hiya.
You know, it's funny, right? Whenever I use our last names, I feel like this is just so much more grown up of a podcast. I feel like when I use our last names, I feel like, oh my God, we actually sound professional here.
They're real people.
All right, cool. For those of you who might not have listened to the podcast before, what we do on Netflix vs. Cinema is we go to the cinema. Each week, we watch a couple of things. We try and limit it to 3. So 3 things that we've watched in the cinema this week, and we come back and we rate them out of 5. We also watch things at home on Netflix and other streaming platforms, and we rate them out of 5. And at the end of the show, we would tell you, where do we think our money has been better spent this week? Has it been better spent in Netflix, or has it been spent in the cinema, actually leaving our houses? So this week, shall we kick off with the cinema and tell us, what have we seen in the cinema? Shaun?
Okay, well, in the cinema, I went to see they re-released The Clockwork Orange, which I think is a terrific piece of a film, Kubrick film. I watched that twice, and then I also watched 12 Mighty Orphans. So,
all right, cool. So we will be using 12 Mighty Orphans, because one of our rules on this show is that you can't bring in a film that you've already watched before, because that would just be unfair. Because I just
wanted to plug that because it's just really nice that they re-released it, and it didn't seem dated at all, which I know that you think it would. You would think it would be dated, but it didn't seem dated. And
I think there's elements of A Clockwork Orange that will actually see stupidly relevant to today.
Relevant, yeah. Yeah, possibly.
I think it's one of those things that, will make people start saying things like, ooh, Kubrick, he was a visionary. He saw the future and he put it on film.
I don't think it's so much that, but it's like with Sharon. I mean, it's just the camera work. It's like the montages, like the films, like when we went to see Barry Lyndon, Sharon.
Yeah.
That's all in there. It's all sort of fantastic imagery and it's just, I don't know. I think it's just the way the whole thing's shot.
Yeah. Cool. I once met a guy on a film set who said that, the steady cam work on The Shining when the kid is cycling through the Overlook Hotel.
Yeah.
He said he's the one who did that shot.
Oh, wow.
He said he did the Steadicam shot because it was the first film in the UK to use a Steadicam. It had just been, and nobody knew how to work it, and he was like, yeah, I did that.
Cool.
Yeah, I wanted to actually interview him because he said he'd been on the set of every single Bond movie, ever. Yeah, and he had some stories about Sean Connery and an island and women and a helicopter, but never mind. Never mind. Sharon, what did you see in the cinema?
I went to see a film called Herself.
Herself. Okay, I've heard things about this, and I saw. I think earlier this week I sent you guys a message going, "Is there anything new in the cinema near you?" Because there was nothing new in the. It's kind of become like almost my nemesis. It gives me films to watch, but also it doesn't give me some films to watch. And the View Cinema Redditch, who I complain and I whinge and I moan about, I looked on Tuesday. Tuesday is usually my movie watching night, and there was nothing. Everything that was in that cinema, we'd either watched it before or I knew that we're not going to watch it, like Paw Patrol the movie. We're not watching Paw Patrol the movie. But then all of a sudden on Wednesday, the Many Saints of Newark showed up, and I was like, what? It got released on a Wednesday? What's going on here? So it showed up on Wednesday, but not on the Tuesday. So I went to see the Many Saints of Newark, which is subtitled A Sopranos Story. It's kind of a prequel to the TV series.
I saw the trailer for that.
Yeah, The Sopranos. So anyway, what did we see at home?
Okay, well, I saw Gunpowder Milkshake.
Oh, yep, cool, good stuff. I saw that too. I saw that we had a family film night watching Gunpowder Milkshake. All right, cool. Good to know. Sharon, what did you see at home?
I saw a film called BlueMiracle.
All right.
On Netflix.
On Netflix, and I saw. What did I see at home? I saw something called The Kid Detective. The Kid Detective on Sky Cinema, which is something I it's one of those few films that you see the trailer and you go, you know what, I think I want to watch that, and it might be a bit of a spoiler for the review to say I was not disappointed, but let's see, where shall we start this week? Let's start. I'll tell you what. I'll kick off. How about I'll kick off with the Many Saints of Newark?
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll be interested in this because I've never seen The Sopranos. I mean, I'm aware of it, but I've never seen The Sopranos. So
same here. I've never seen it.
So
I'm culturally aware of it, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah, and so this will be an interesting to see if it's worth a watch or not. So I'm looking forward to this one.
Okay, and just like you guys, I also have never seen The Sopranos.
Oh, right, okay.
Wow.
It's funny. I've never seen The Sopranos, and part of me, the only reason I watched this was because it was the only film that I could actually get to watch. Because and there with the idea of this film coming about is quite similar because to another beloved TV show that lasted a couple of seasons and then ended up with a movie being made years after the show was ended, and that was Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad made this film called El Camino, which I reviewed on the show. And I remember, Shaun, you asked, oh, do you have to have watched Breaking Bad to watch this? And I think with that, I was like, I struggle to see how you would be able to follow that film if you hadn't watched Breaking Bad, because it's almost a direct follow-on from this. This takes a different tact because David Chase, the guy who created The Sopranos, has gone on record as saying he has no interest whatsoever in doing a what happened after the final scene of The Sopranos. He says he has no interest whatsoever. But he's gone back into the past, and this film starts in 1967 in Newark, and there was this thing called the Newark race riots. So it goes into at this time, Tony Soprano, who's the main character of The Sopranos, is a child. So he is about, 5 years old or something like that. Probably more like 8 years old when this film starts. And you get to meet like his family and everything like that, and they're involved in crime, and you get to see, I think the period detail in this is amazing. And I think, Shaun, for the period detail, I think you would love the first half of this film. I think you would absolutely love it because the way it sets everything up, it talks about how the race riot started because a black taxi driver got killed by the police, and talk about things that are very, very timely. He got killed by the police, and then this riot's kicked off. And then it goes into how the Italian crime families went, oh, well, if these riots are happening, we can do all this crime and we can get away with all this crime. And you have Alessandro Nivola, who plays Dicky Moltisanti, who is Tony Soprano's uncle, and he is the main character of this film. So one of the best things about this film is that it doesn't do, oh, let's do young Tony Soprano and let's find out how he found his love of pasta or anything like that. For most of the film, Tony Soprano is a background character. And I think it's a great, great idea. He's a background character, and you have his uncles, and you meet all these new characters that you do not have to have any knowledge of The Sopranos to follow these characters. So you have, and I think it has Alessandro Nivola, who is brilliant in this film. He is absolutely brilliant in this film. There's a woman called Michaela, I can't remember her last name, but she's brilliant. She plays because you have Ray Liotta. Ray Liotta is in this film, and I think there is something clever about the casting of Ray Liotta, because there are bits of this film that you keep thinking Goodfellas, especially at the beginning of the film, because if you think about the way Goodfellas starts when he's a kid and he's seeing all these gangsters walking around, it's as Fairbanks can remember, I wanted to be a gangster, and that's Ray Liotta doing that. This film starts with a voiceover as well. There's one particular scene where there's somebody who's walking away from a building with a fence that's on fire behind him, and I just thought, hang on, that's Goodfellas. That's a Goodfellas shot from a slightly different angle, and the fact they have Ray Liotta in it, who obviously in Goodfellas was this young guy who saw the wonder and the brilliance of the gangster life, and in this film, Ray Liotta plays an old dude who's almost at regret about the gangster life, and I'm just kind of like, that's genius casting. It sort of gets you into the theme of the film almost straight away. Boom. And I think it's really good, and I also think he is brilliant in this. There are some scenes where he's having a scene with Alessandro Nivola, and Alessandro Nivola says something, and just from Ray Liotta's eyes, you can see exactly what he's thinking, and I think it's some amazing acting in this. So I think it's really good. I think I love the period detail. I don't know much about The Sopranos, but there's bits where they do something and you kind of feel, I feel like that's like a reference to something else in The Sopranos, or because there's some characters that when they show them, there's a character that gets born during the film, and you're like, if that character is born now, that character has got to figure in The Sopranos right now. So in this scene where Tony is meeting this baby cousin, there's something going on here that I don't understand because I haven't watched The Sopranos. So yeah, all in all, I thought it was a really good film. I think Vera Farmiga, I never know how to pronounce her last name. She plays Tony Soprano's mum, and she is awesome. She is so. I spent half the film trying to figure out if it was her or not. I was like, it looks a bit like Vera Farmiga, but I don't really know. John Bernthal plays his dad. I think essentially the cast for this is stacked, and some of them don't really do anything. It's almost as if the film has too much going on. As in, you can tell that the source thing is a TV show because the pacing is slow. It moves along at it takes its own sweet time to do anything, and you feel as if, oh, if we had another episode, if we had 10 episodes, you could go into that storyline, you could go into that storyline. And one of the ones I really liked was about there's a guy, Leslie Odom Jr., who plays like this black guy who the mafia used to do some of the dirty work. And there's a storyline about him deciding, you know what, why should we actually work for white people? I want to build my own crime empire. So that's going on as well. So there's a whole bunch of different things going on. I don't think you need to watch The Sopranos to actually follow this. I think it's quite good, and it doesn't particularly show the mob life as something glamorous. It shows it almost as something just very down to earth. This is how things go on, and this is how fickle some people can be about things. So all in all, I would warn you that it is a bit slow. I think people who watch The Sopranos will get a lot more out of it. There are quite a few different storylines that don't really get followed up because there's not enough time. Because it's only a 2-hour film. But all in all, I'll give this a 4 out of 5.
Ooh, cool.
Yeah. All right, cool. And so we go from that to... let's see. Let's go with Sharon, because I've just done a lot of talking, and I have a lot to say about Gunpowder Milkshake, which Shaun has watched. So Sharon, tell us. We're going to go to Netflix and tell us what you saw this week.
BlueMiracle. It's one of those, I suppose it's like a genre of inspirational, family-friendly, based on a true story sort of films, which is probably not the neatest search engine title put in. But
it does sound like a Netflix subheading, you know, when they go like movies with a strong female lead.
Yeah, they got these, and they say, because you watch this, you might like this. But anyway, it's based on a true story, and I'm going to ask you a question actually part of the way through, and you'll see if you can guess how this film turns out. It's basically set in Mexico in the near past, and it's a struggling orphanage where they take in street children or just abandoned children. And the couple who run it are a husband and wife who met on the streets, but they were both orphaned and end up being, street children. And they're passionate about this orphanage where they take in all these just vulnerable children and give them a home and sort of provide a family for them. And this guy is so loved that the children call him Papa. And they just look up to him, but the orphanage is struggling. And then a storm comes and it floods the orphanage. And at the same time, they find out that there is this fishing competition that's going on where you can win an awful lot of money. And there's a guy, a grizzled old sailor, fisherman guy, played by Dennis Quaid, who has won this competition twice before. And this year, because of a storm and a lot of the ships have been disabled, and normally it's like an elite competition where only like the best, you have to qualify to be able to take part in this competition. This year it's opened up to all comers, so anyone who's got a boat can enter this competition, and the person who lands the biggest fish, the biggest marlin or the biggest tuna or the biggest whatever, whoever lands the biggest fish wins an awful lot of money.
Okay.
Now, what do you think will happen if a group of orphans and a grizzled old fisherman enter a competition against all the odds?
Well, if this was
and it's called BlueMiracle.
If it was a 19 if this was a 1980s Amblin movie, I would say obviously the orphans and the grizzled fishermen are going to win. But obviously this is true life. This is a true life story that you're telling us, Sharon. So they must lose because it's true life.
But it's got Dennis Quaid in it.
Dennis Quaid. Now,
okay.
What can we say?
All right, cool. All right,
So,
I think
I will probably guess you as an inspirational true story. I'm not going to spoil the ending, but the ending was inspirational.
Okay.
And Julie and moving, and there's a lot of blue in the film. So basically, it does what it says on the tin. It is a film about blue and miracles. So they've been sort of sarcastic. It's actually quite a fun family film. There's not many, because when I watch films with my mum, who's in her late 80s, there's certain films she doesn't want to see. And when you go through like action films, Netflix recommends, and you know that this is not going to be suitable for either young children or the very elderly. And so sometimes it is a struggle to find films that we can actually watch together. So this was one we were quite pleased to find, because I was reading this blurb thinking there shouldn't be anything offensive or alarming or horrible in there, and there wasn't. So it's like you would say it was like a sort of kiddie, elderly, person friendly film, and so it does exactly what it was supposed to do. It entertained for an hour and a half. It was there's like a bit of an uplifting story in there. There were some child actors being child actors, and there was Jennifer Quaid.
That's a word.
So it was what it was. I would say it was a solid 3. I mean, I don't think these films, when they make them, they just must. I think the American audience, they churn these out by the dozen, don't they? For the sort of God channels and for the inspirational.
Well,
channels.
you see, that's the thing. That's the thing, because once you said BlueMiracle, I was thinking that it sounds like one of the Christian blockbusters, if you will.
Yeah.
Because that is massive business. I mean, we know anything. Essentially, there's this sort of like Christian industrial complex in America where they figured out how to make money around God. So and this is spread to films. So there's things like God's Not Dead, Fireproof, and I figured
there's a lot about true stories behind songs and famous songs.
Yes.
Three of those.
I can only imagine. Yeah. So when you said BlueMiracle and you said inspirational, I was like, this sounds like one of those.
It is one of those. It's firmly in that set. Yeah. So if you know what you're getting into, it's you know what you're getting into, and so it's almost like you're on safe ground.
Ooh, the case for Christ.
Yeah, I think it's what I think they've identified that there's a market for this film, and so
totally.
And then that's we're sort of fall within that market. I mean, I'm happily to all watch anything really, but if you want to stay safe. And this is like a safe film. It's you're completely within your comfort zone.
You can watch it with mum. You can watch it with mum.
It was completely a safe film to watch. So
this is totally different to our family film night that we had the other night, which we'll talk about. It's like you watched BlueMiracle, we watched Gunpowder Milkshake. So speaking about orphan, sorry, Sharon, you could give it a 3.
3, and we can move on.
3 for BlueMiracle. And now, speaking about orphans,
adds on nicely, doesn't it?
It does go on nicely. It does go on nicely. Is that by any chance the same film you watched, Shaun, with a different title? A film that I have been calling.
Possibly could be, one of those nice, really good, family-friendly movies.
I
actually heard you told me the title of this, and I actually wrote down 12 Angry Orphans. I was like, wait, that has got to be wrong. No one's gonna call a film. Once you say 12 Angry, there's only one film you're thinking of. You're not gonna call a film 12 Angry Orphans. But even though it might be a nice sort of like art house thing where they recast 12 Angry Men, but only with orphans, and see if it makes a difference. But you saw a film called 12 Mighty Orphans.
12 Mighty Orphans. Yeah.
This was in the cinema.
This was at the cinema, yeah.
This was at the cinema. I have heard nothing about this. Absolutely nothing. So tell us, what is this?
This is what I figured. I was looking to watch something. Now, I figured that you would probably, because I noticed the Sopranos had come out on the Wednesday, so I thought, well, that's probably, because that was one I was looking at.
Yep.
And then I thought Sharon would be herself. I thought, yeah, that's a Sharon film. It's got to be a Sharon film. So I should watch this 12 Mighty Orphans. And it is American football, and I'm into my American football. So this should be an interesting film to watch.
This is how you know we've been doing this podcast for too long. Shaun can read our minds. Shaun is going, Tosin would see that, and Sharon would see that. I'm going to go see that.
So anyway, this film, this is about there's an orphanage, which leads on nicely from Sharon's. There's this orphanage in Texas. It's based on a true story, Masonic orphanage, and this professor arrives with his wife and his family, and he starts football coaching. He's had some trauma in the past because he went through the First World War, and you get a few flashbacks of some of the things he went through, but that stands him in good stead because obviously these orphans, although they're like 17, their parents.
They've seen some stuff.
Yeah, they've seen some stuff. So he works really well, and it's basically this truth. So there's these 12 orphans.
So when is it set? Sorry, Shaun. Is it set?
Sorry. So depression. This is depression. It starts off with it's set up in the 30s, 40s, and it starts off with sort of footage of the depression era, and so this becomes these orphans. They become a football team, American football team, and it's really interesting the fact that they've got the old hats and pads, because I didn't think they played with pads in the old days. I recognise the old leather hats, but they actually have like leather pads, because there's one bit in it where one of the coaches is saying, he's got iron in them pads. That's not fair. He's got iron in them pads. So the referee goes, I'm sorry, coach. I'm gonna have to check their pads. You go, no, fine. But anyway, so there's American football. I love American football, and it's quite interesting because this is where there's only 12, so he hasn't got enough players to play, but they have to play the whole game. They have to play offense and defense. And of course, they go on this little bit of a run, and they become
so Shaun, for those of us who don't know, how many people do you usually have in American football?
There's 11 people on the field at any time.
All right.
And of course, some of the other high school teams, they had 30 players, so they could rotate quite a lot. Whereas these guys, they had to play, so they had to be on the field all the time, really, all bar one of them. And they start to have this little run, and of course they become popular and they become like celebrities. Obviously, this is the era of the Depression, so it's like, these orphans, because you've got all these privileged kids that are starting to, that they've got nice uniforms and all things like that. But basically, and obviously there's quite a good cast in this. There's Martin Sheen, he plays like an old doctor that they look up to. And then you've got a really, really nasty sort of teacher that exploits the boys and uses them to make things and sort of beats them and stuff. So you've got a few, you've got a few conflicts between the staff, and the sheriff. But there's a couple of good moments that you got the sheriff, who you don't really know if he's for the boys or if he's with the nasty teachers that are exploiting the boys. You don't really know until the end. So that's quite an interesting.
Okay.
So basically it's a feel good story. There's nothing nasty in it. You could watch it with your mum, you could watch it with anybody. There's nothing really new in it from some of the other, like we were saying about basketball movies and things like that. There's not really, I think after a while it's not as good as Remember the Titans, and I think you've seen Remember the Titans, but it's very much
the Titans are
it's very much in that vein, but much sort of nicer and much
is it Remember the Titans Junior?
Remember the
remember the Junior Titans.
The Junior Titans. Yeah,
remember the Teen Titans.
Yeah, the Teen Titans. So this is basically a really feel good film. A bunch of no hopers or considered losers that start to become really, really good. And there's a few, obviously, the people at the state, they don't want them to win, so they try to find excuses. There's a bit of a courtroom case where they say one of the orphans was too old to play, but it comes, and it's all a bit. And Roosevelt, the president, gets involved and all that, and it all becomes a bit like,
while we were on here, I went and had a look, and it's based on a non-fiction book, so it's based on a true story. Yeah, based on a true story, a bit like BlueMiracle. Orphans are in the air tonight. I don't understand, but
I know, isn't that funny?
Yeah.
Go on.
So, I just ask, with Remember the Titans, a big part of it was the race element, because you were trying to segregate like a team with black and white. Is there an element of that in this?
There's no element of that whatsoever.
All the orphans are white.
Yeah, all the orphans are white, and all the teams they play are white as well. So.
Okay, cool, good.
In fact, thinking about it, I don't think. Oh, there might have been. No, I don't know if there was. I don't think there was. So
cool, good. That's that. Okay, so Remember the Teen Titans, not so much.
Yeah, not so much. So basically, Mighty Orphans. It was okay. There was nothing really new in it. It was it was a sort of 3-star film. It's a 3-star film, basically.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't, I didn't like it, but I didn't think, whoa. And I do like my American for
Yeah.
And it had moments, and it had a few good dramatic moments. And you did have at the end, you had the actual footage of what had happened to all these orphans and what they done. Like most of them went into the military. Some of them became, you know, and they all did pretty well for themselves.
Luke Wilson plays the coach.
Yeah.
Oh well. So this sounds like, I don't know. It has quite a good.
That's a good cast.
It has a good cast, but like, you know, people who were never particularly A-list, like Wayne Knight, Robert Duvall, Martin Sheen. That's a good cast, but interesting. It almost makes me feel like this is a kind of film that came about because people needed work after the pandemic. But no, it was filmed before the pandemic. It was filmed before the pandemic. All right, cool. So that is 3 stars for 12 Mighty Orphans. Although I have to say one thing about, I think American football is probably the sport that comes off best on film.
I totally agree with you. I think so, yeah.
I think closely followed by basketball and probably essentially they're all American.
Baseball, yeah. The American sports, I think. The British sports, they don't really. I can't think of a cricket movie, to be honest.
Oh no, there is actually a cricket movie.
There's a cricket movie.
I can't remember what it's called. There's a cricket movie, but it's good lord.
Anyway, but there's some rugby things, but the football ones are football. The soccer British
Escape
football
to
ones.
Victory.
Yeah, it's all right.
You know, the thing is, I
The
think
Mean Machine.
Yeah,
with
I know.
I think Escape to Victory is probably more seen as it's a film that is widely accepted as not good, but it is also universally loved.
Loved, yeah.
So, that is
these films that you see the crowd scenes and they're all dressed in like this. They've just like got a football crowd in, haven't they? And they said, "I'm going to film this. Just pretend it's during the war," but they're all turned up in like their 70s flares. But you look in the crowd, they're all literally leather bomber jackets and flares. Yeah. With like a base that you roll a scarf every now and then.
Oh my god!
It is not period at all, but it's still fun, and everyone likes to see Pele doing his flicky kicky thing.
And Sylvester Stallone being the American
goalkeeper.
Yeah. Goalkeeper. But yeah, Escape to Victory. So 12. That's 3 stars for 12 Mighty Orphans. Oh, man, okay, I've got my head thinking now about good sports movie. No. Move on. Ooh, boxing.
Boxing,
boxing
pretty well.
Boxing transfers pretty well to film, yeah. All right, cool. And now we go back to Netflix and Friends, and we are going to talk about a film called The Kid Detective, which is on Sky Cinema. Now, I mentioned as this is a film that it's very rare nowadays that I see a trailer for a film and I go, ooh, that has made me think I'm going to watch that film. Most of the time, I think I've either decided I want to watch the film or not, and the trailer doesn't do anything to dissuade me one way or another. And this actually made me. I watched the trailer and thought that could be interesting, mainly because it stars Adam Brody. So Adam Brody is
he's
this
class.
Yeah, Adam Brody is. Are you? You're not thinking of Adrian Brody, are you?
No.
You're thinking of Adam Brody, the younger one.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the curly hair.
Yeah, with the curly hair.
Yeah, he is class.
Yeah.
I
think so.
Yeah. Adam Brody, I think he is class. He came to prominence playing a character on the OC when he was he was supposed to be playing a teenager, and everybody said he was a standout from that show. And he never really got like a big film career or anything like that. And the plot of this film almost kind of mirrors that. So it's called The Kid Detective because he plays this character who, when he was a teenager, he used to watch TV shows, and he starts off with talking about when he watched all these detective movies from like the 50s and stuff, he would always guess who the bad guy was before the end of the film, and he would always have solved the thing. So he decided that he set up as a detective. He figured out one small case. And when he figured out that case, he became like a celebrity in the local town, and his picture was always in the paper, and there would be like a big story about when he solved the case. And so they loved him so much because he found something for the town, so they gave him an office. He actually had an office in there, and they said, you have the office for life. And the guy who gives out ice creams in the town said, you have ice cream free for life and all that. And this is all when this kid is about 12. And so he becomes a celebrity, and people go like, we've got a genius in the town. He's amazing. He's brilliant. And one day, the mayor's daughter goes missing. And everybody is like, don't worry, we know you're going to figure this out. Don't worry, we know you're going to get there. Don't worry, we know you're going to we know you're going to crack this case. And he never cracks the case. And so it sort of jumps forward like 20 years. So he's now like in his 30s, and he's kind of a bit run down because not solving this case kind of broke him. And now he just has people who, like, kids come to him and go, oh, one of my friends said that he went down to Boston for the summer and, like, you know, he had a tryout with the White Sox. I want you to find out if he's lying or not. And he's like, he's lying. It's like, he's lying. I've solved the case. And that's kind of like where his life has got to. His parents are like, you know, come in and look at him and they're like, oh, you sure you still want to do this? Are you sure you don't want to sort of like do something else with your life? We're a bit worried about you. Why don't you just give up this whole detective thing? And he finally gets an actual case where somebody comes in and says, my boyfriend was killed, like last week. You might have heard about the story. I would like you to find out who did this. And he's like, okay, this is something I can do. I can actually do this. And I think for him, it's kind of almost like a little bit of redemption, because this one case that he couldn't solve when he was 12 has dogged him, and he's like, no, I've got to do this because this is an actual thing. He's not even getting paid for it, but he wants to actually find out what happened to this boy. Why was this boy killed? And it's funny because do you guys remember a film called Brick?
Not really, I
Brick.
don't.
It starred Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and it was directed by Rian Johnson. And it's essentially, if you took Humphrey Bogart and you transplanted him to a 90s high school film and put, like, you know, him when he played, what was the name of that private eye he played? Phil Marlowe?
Marlowe, yeah.
Yeah. If you took Marlowe and put him in that's so Brick is essentially like a film noir Humphrey Bogart mystery, but set in a 90s high school. And this reminded me a bit of that, because it's like he goes in and he starts has to do all this detective stuff to figure out what's going on, or figure out who's doing what, and he goes to, like, these kids who are underneath the bridge to find out if there was drugs involved. He goes to the family, and there's a lot of times where this film it is being a typical detective story, but at the same time it's playing with all the things you expect to see in a typical detective story, if you get what I mean. So I think people like us who know about film noir and stuff, I think will love it, because, you know, oh, this is what's supposed to happen, and then it just undercuts it with something else. And so it starts off like, you know, a really, really sort of fun thing, a really funny, let's see what's going to happen here, it's going to be crazy, this guy thinks he's a detective, used to be a kid. Where the film ends up is somewhere a lot deeper. It's somewhere a lot deeper. It's somewhere a lot more. And even when he finally, I don't think it's a spoiler to say he solves the case. But when he solves the case, it's not what you expect. It doesn't go the way you want. And even the final shot of the film is kind of like, the final shot of the film, when it finishes, it makes you go, hang on, what did I just watch? And was it a romp? Was it a detective story? What was the point of it? But I really, really like this film. I really, really like the film. I love the way it made you think. I love the way it played with what you expected. I think everybody is brilliant in it, and I think Adam Brody is brilliant. And oh my god, the ending! It ends in such a like, you know when a film ends and you're sat there thinking, how the hell would you deal with that? Like, what? It's like, how does that even work? I'll give it a 4 out of 5, and I would recommend go watch it. I know we all have access to Sky Cinema. I'll say go watch it. The Kid Detective with Adam Brody. I really, really enjoyed it, and I know I've just set this thing up to fail, and Shaun's gonna come back next week and go, Tos, I thought it was absolute rubbish. If I could give it a 0, I would. but I would give this a 4 out of 5. I've had a good week, but and now we go back to cinema. We go back to cinema, and Sharon, you saw Herself. So,
Herself, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about Herself.
This is a film set in Ireland, and it is about it starts off with a woman at home with her 2 children, and she's just playing with the children, and then her husband comes in. And she says to the children, "Oh, go play outside for a minute, go play outside." And then just as the children disappear, she gives one of her daughters a little box, and she says the code word, "Oh, Black Widow." And then you see this little girl basically running like mad, and you think, what was that all about? And then her husband basically launches the most savage attack upon her, you know, hair pulling, slamming her head. Basically, he just launches this physical assault on her.
Is that his wife, or
that's his wife?
Children, that's his wife.
And on the woman, yeah. And the one little girl's hiding in like the playhouse in the garden, and the other little girl, when the Black Widow is basically her mum's safe word. So she says, if she says this, then she tells her basically her daughter has to run to the corner shop and get them to call the police. And she's already set up this because she knows that her husband is violent, and she's been trying to get out, but she just hasn't quite managed to leave yet. And so he discovers her stash of money that she's been saving up as her escape fund, and he goes for her. And that's the opening scene of the film. And then you jump to like 6 months later, where basically she's now living in like refuge accommodation. She's in a hotel room next to the airport in Dublin. And she's looking for a house, and she's having to drive miles to take the children to school, and then miles in the other direction. And she's got these 2 cleaning jobs, and she's basically just at the end of her tether. She doesn't know quite what to do. And then she's living in this one hotel room with 2 small children, and just doing cleaning jobs. And she goes to the housing officer and says, where am I on the housing list? And she's something like 349 on the housing list. And so her chances of getting like her house of her own are remote, to say the least. And every time there's a house comes on the market, her and the other 300 people on the house list basically turn up to say, if they're willing to take like benefit money, or the Irish equivalent of like your housing benefit, they're saying, we'll take money with benefits. And then she either gets shown hovels or like 3-bedroom houses that she hasn't got a hope of getting, because they're going to want to give it to like the married couple with a secure income. And so she's nowhere. And then she sees this advert where this guy says, you're struggling for money, you can actually build your own house for £30,000. And £30,000 or euros in this case, I think it's something like 40,000 euros. He says it's out of her reach, but it's still achievable if she can get a loan. And first of all, she goes to housing people to say, you're spending thousands a month on me, housing me in this hotel. Could you loan me this money? And then I could build my own house, and it solves your problem. And they're like, no way. Then I won't give you the whole plot away. But in the end, she does get a piece of land, and she is given some money. And then she sets about building her own house, almost like a prefab, but a house that and the story unfolds is basically how, through sort of building this house, she sort of goes through this process of self-discovery. And
it sounds a little bit like Grand Designs, the movie.
Yes, it is. And they, at one point, one of the people who helps her with the house starts taking pictures, and she's like, don't take any pictures. And he goes, don't you want us to be sort of log it like, Grand Designs, where I'll film you as you're building it? And she'll go, no, I don't want you to put anything out on there. And it's a secret because she doesn't want her husband to know, because basically if he finds out, he'll
turn up,
sabotage it. And he's sort of trying to...
sorry. So this film follows the woman who got attacked at the beginning of the film.
Yes.
Oh, I thought it followed her daughter. Sorry. I now got it.
No, it's the mother. The daughters are something like 4 and 6.
Yeah.
They're quite little.
Okay, gotcha.
And then there's other dramas there's a custody issue, and there's a court scene, and then there's other matters where her husband's family try to persuade her to come and live with them, and that they can patch it all up. And so you've got this sort of domestic struggle sort of built around the framework of them trying to build this home. And obviously this house is sort of symbolic of her trying to regain her independence from this relationship and trying to build a new life, symbolically, by building this actual physical house.
Yeah.
So it was good, well acted, it was well crafted. I have to say my only reservation was that it felt a bit like it didn't feel very cinematic.
Okay.
Because it's about like a domestic violence issue, because it's about this sort of internal struggle. To me, it wasn't a particularly cinematic experience. I think it felt like a slightly elongated television drama. It's the sort of thing that you would see on a Sunday night, maybe a two-parter on a Sunday night on television. But it was
Grand
good.
Designs.
Yeah, it was good. It felt worthy, and I felt you didn't feel moved by it. And I was thinking about my experiences of my policing experience of women with domestic violence. And there's only one thing that jarred with me, and there's a court case where one of the questions she was asked was, why didn't you leave him sooner? I'm thinking, in this day and age, no one in the criminal justice system would say to a woman who has been the victim of domestic violence, why didn't you leave? Because they know that it's never that simple. And it's never that, you get hit, go, find somewhere else to live. It's never that straightforward. And I think anyone working within the criminal justice system would say, you wouldn't ask that question. You just wouldn't. And I think in this film, when they said that, to me that felt a little bit clumsy, because I was thinking, you're asking that question to give her the opportunity to answer it in a different way by saying, you know. So to me, I felt that it was like they set up that question, that it wouldn't really.
Well, they set up that question to sort of like get their point across.
Yeah, to get their point across, to say, look, you know, you're picking on the wrong person here.
Yep.
Because like, yeah, we know that's why you wouldn't get asked that question if you're in a real criminal justice situation. So anyway, saying all that, I enjoyed it. I thought it was worthy. It had value, it had meaning, and it was moving, shocking in places. But I would still say, to me, it wasn't particularly cinematic, so I could only give it a 3.
Only give it a 3. All right, cool. And so with that, we now go back to Netflix and Friends for a final thing. A film that is one of these weird things that has been happening a lot more. And it's one of the reasons why we haven't started doing this podcast, because the line is getting blurred between Netflix and cinema, which is what, because when on my search for a movie to watch in the cinemas this week, I was started looking a bit further afield, because the cinema is about 10 minutes from my house. So I was like, okay, cool, I'll just go 10 minutes. So I said, okay, let me try and find something else and go a bit further, go 30 minutes from my house. And there's a cinema that is showing this film on the big screen.
Okay.
And I was like, I thought this was a Sky Cinema thing, because it's on Sky at home, but it's actually in some cinemas.
Oh,
it doesn't
wow.
seem like it's a wide release. It's in some cinemas. It's mostly on Sky Cinema, but it's in some cinemas. So the Empire Cinema in Great Park in Birmingham, I don't know what you're doing, but they have this film up. They have this film on the big screen. But this is Gunpowder Milkshake, a film that a friend of mine, Simon Edward Spartan, who is currently in the States, because he knows about films, he knows we do this podcast. He texted me about this probably about 2 months ago, saying this is a really, really good watch. I'd heard the title for a couple of months, but I hadn't seen the film. The film has it's been out in the States. It's only just made it to the UK. And Shaun, would you like to fire away. Tell us.
Okay.
Tell us what Gunpowder Milkshake's about.
Yeah, okay. So basically it's a story. It starts off in a diner with a mum and a daughter. The mum's a bit of an assassin. She kills somebody. She has to hide, and she sort of just disappears from this girl's life. This girl grows up to become becomes an assassin herself. So she follows in her mum's footsteps, basically. And she's got to do a hit, and it goes slightly wrong. So, and of course, the people that she was supposed to be doing the hit for decide to get angry with her, and they obviously send people to destroy. Oh, by the way, yeah, there's this little girl that tags along as well. There's a little girl involved that tags along, which I thought she was great. But anyway, so that's a basic story. So you basically got a John Wick story with like assassin gone wrong, and a lot of people chasing, a lot of people going after her, and she's pretty good, you know. In fact, in this film, there's a lot of tones of, like, I would say it's a cross between probably Kill Bill and John Wick sort of thing, you know. I know I mentioned John Wick before, but and some of the fight scenes in it, certainly one in a bowling alley, totally reminded me of the Crazy 8 scene in the Kill Bill film. And there's a few other references that I picked up which I thought, oh yeah, this was quite good. And the action sequences, I mean, I could if I'd have had my picky head on, I could have probably found a few things, but on the whole, I just enjoyed this, and I went with the ride, and I thought it was great. Oh yeah, and there's these, like, the librarians. She got these 3 aunties, which are like librarians, and they're obviously the library. Yeah, Sharon, you would love to go in there. Let's just put it this way. I don't know if you would, but you probably would like to have seen their library. The
library is awesome. The set design for the library is absolutely awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, and when you have the librarians, I know that they are played by Michelle Yeoh, Cara Guccino, and Angela Bassett. You know, yes, you know that these ain't your normal librarians. Let me put it that way.
Yes, put it that way. Yeah, they're pretty handy.
Okay, so yeah, sure. I mean, a lot of things that you're saying is that, I mean, I think John Wick has breathed some life into this sort of like single assassin who's the best in the world, going on a mission and blah blah blah. And ever since John Wick came on and became such a hit, there are films that you can. You know how the other week we were talking about how you had Die Hard, and after Die Hard was made, you had films like Toy Story, which is Die Hard in a school, and so there's all these sort of, like, you know, splinters off from John Wick that have come on. I think Gunpowder Milkshake is one. Weirdly enough, the day before I saw Gunpowder Milkshake, I saw a film on Netflix called Kate, just called Kate, which it's like the people were in the same room when they came up with the ideas for these two films, because it's a similar thing. This woman is an assassin. She's the best of the world, all that kind of stuff. She ends up like, with a kid tagging along with her while she's trying to complete her mission. And she has some sort of weird connection to what happened with the kid's parent, because that kid is an orphan and she has something to do with that. Almost like the same thing. Only that. Yeah, I was kind of like, oh, there is definitely something in the water with this. But what you were saying about Gunpowder Milkshake is that I agree with you that after a while, it's very soon, this film tells you, don't take us seriously.
Yeah.
Like, not long after you start watching it, this film says, we're not to be taken seriously here.
And there's some hilarious moments in it. The thing is in the doctor's place.
Oh, yeah.
I was still like, oh yeah, okay, let's go. Literally in that. I was like, oh, that was really,
okay. I don't think it's a spoiler to say that this film has an action sequence in which somebody has their arms paralyzed and has to take out 3 assassins that come at them.
Yeah, but to me, it's the assassins as well, which like especially the one that's like got the bad leg.
The one in the wheelchair,
yeah. That was one of them, yeah. So that, I mean, and it didn't take itself too seriously. It was really, really good fun to watch. It was a really good watch. I thought the acting was terrific, and as I say, some of the foibles didn't bother me at all. I just went with it and really, really enjoyed it.
Sean, did you have any idea of where this film is set? Or when?
No, I haven't really thought about that. I hadn't really thought about that. So I would say somewhere around about, I don't know, Los Angeles or somewhere, or Chicago.
Well, because I'm looking at some of the architecture in this film is like a mishmash. Like, the library itself. The library looks like an old European city. Yeah, it looks like it's in Budapest or something like that.
Yeah, there is. Yeah,
and the fact that everybody in this film, nobody uses a smartphone. They use flip phones. They use things that look like the Nokia 3210. And I'm like, they have this baby. And I'm like, when is this film set?
I know. You're right. It wasn't. That's why I said Los Angeles, Chicago, because like the bowling alley remind me of like maybe a Los Angeles location. And like you say, some of the architecture was like Chicago or somewhere like that. So yeah, that's an interesting. Yeah. I mean, I have no idea. It's just.
Yeah, it's not the point, but it almost kept, and the diner looks like it's set in the middle of the desert in Nevada or something like that.
Yeah.
It is all over. It is a bit all over the shop. The action sequences that are quite good, but it is essentially just an action movie. It's a female led, heavily female led.
Heavily female led. Really, totally. In fact, isn't it? When you think about it,
it is totally female, and it's brilliant because you have an action sequence, right? You have this whole big climatic battle that has Karen Gillan, Lena Headey, Michelle Yeoh, Angela Bassett, Cara Guccino taking on a whole bunch of men who are
Russians, big Russian, like the whole Russian mafia army has come.
Well, yeah. There were some of
a busload of them, isn't it? I think they actually turn up in a coach.
They actually do. They actually literally turn up in a bus.
In a big coach. Yeah.
There's literally a busload.
That was quite funny.
A busload. It's kind of weird though, because it's. Although I'll tell you one, right? You know the sort of second in command in the film.
Wait, the Russian second?
Yeah. I'm not even sure that they are Russian because, like, the main guy, he has an American accent. The one who's talking about his daughters and talking about, I've always considered myself a feminist and all that. But there's this guy who shows up with a toothpick in his mouth and he has like this hair that Sharon, you know how we were complaining about Frank Grillo's hair last week?
Yes.
We found one that's topped it.
Yeah, definitely. It was like an ant. Yeah.
Oh my god, the guy showed up, and even the first time you see him is in silhouette, and my first thought was, I don't know much about white hair, but dude, wash your hair.
Yeah. No, I agree. It was.
The second he showed up, you wanted him to.
It just seemed like Russians. No, you're right, Tosin. They didn't even really speak in a Russian accent, but you just assume that most of those hoodlums. Whenever you see them in every job, they always seem to be Russians.
Yeah.
So
it's a bit of a yeah. Okay, but anyway. But Shaun,
sorry.
Shaun, but anyway, okay, let's go on to stars. What do you reckon?
Well, I did thoroughly enjoy this film, so I'm going to have to say that it was a 4-star one for me. I really did enjoy it.
All right, 4-star for that. I thought that it ran out of steam towards the end.
Fair enough.
I thought it ran out of steam towards the end. I thought that there were a couple of things that, like, as much as I enjoyed some of the things, there were a couple of things where I was like, well, it's not really setting itself apart from a whole bunch of things. I personally would give it a 3. But
fair enough. No, that's fair comment. I mean, I don't normally laugh at films like that, but as I say, that scene, and I still got a picture of it in my head now, that where they're in the doctor's thing, and the bloke with the gun that's hobbling. It just made me laugh. It just made me. It really, really tickled me. That did.
I think the film does do a lot of. It has a fine line in. It has a fine line in coming up with weird situations. Like, essentially, when they're in the doctor's office, you have this bunch of assassins who are trying to kill somebody, but they are all on laughing gas.
Incompetent. Yeah.
They're all on laughing gas, so it's kind of like there's a whole bunch of things. There's all these random things that they do in the film that are quite good. Oh, and I reckon Shaun. I know you hate car chases, I reckon that in this film they've managed to do a car chase that you can get behind.
Yeah, I could probably. I could probably forgive this car chase.
I
know. Yeah.
There is a bit of there's an inventive car chase in it. There's an inventive car chase in it that I when I was watching I was going, okay, cool, that's good, that's different. But yeah, so anyway, that is it for our reviews this week. Would you guys like to guess which has come out ahead, Netflix or cinema this week?
I think Netflix by 0.5.
I think it's home viewing this week.
Home viewing, yeah.
Home. Okay, if we're taking an average, and if we are being generous and using Shaun's rating of Gunpowder Milkshake and not my rating of Gunpowder Milkshake,
that's where the 0.5 comes in, because I was thinking.
Okay, all right.
Because we could use both of ours as a 7.
Yeah.
I see. You're thinking like if we add them all up.
Yes.
You're saying if we add them all up. Oh,
add
okay,
them all
cool.
up on average.
All right,
yeah.
give me a second while I do some maths. Add them all up.
You'd love that. You'd love that library, Sharon, especially Pride and Prejudice. I think you'd probably, or no, Jane Eyre, whichever one it was.
Honestly, the library, the library scene, the library set is beautiful.
It is.
This is a film I'm aware of. I haven't seen it yet, but I will see it. But that sounds good to me, as long as they don't damage any books when they're having their fight.
You see now, Shaun, this was the point in which I thought that maybe Sharon, because I'll tell you what,
we're going to set a film in a library, then we're going to spend the next half an hour ripping the books apart, and it's just like, no.
Okay, so Sharon, I would recommend you watch the first half of this film.
The first half of the library scene.
I think you remember the first.
Don't ruin the books. That's the whole.
But I think it's the kind of film in which you can see. I think everybody in the film is having fun, and most of the fun translates to you watching. And it's the kind of film that you can see.
I quite rate Karen Gillan, really.
I think Karen Gillan is good.
She's been good in a lot of stuff.
Okay, I've done my maths. Going back to it, and Shaun is exactly right. If we add up the whole thing, this week cinema has amassed 10 points, and getting an average of my score and Shaun's score for Gunpowder Milkshake, Netflix has amassed 10.5 points. Ooh. Yes, so the first round we had Many Saints of Newark 4, and we had BlueMiracle with 3. The second round, things got flipped around a bit with 12 Mighty Orphans with 12 Mighty Orphans.
12 Mighty Orphans. That'd be an interesting movie.
12 Mighty Orphans. 12 Mighty Orphans with 3, and The Kid Detective with 4. And then in the final round, we had Herself with 3, and Gunpowder Milkshake with 2 ratings of 4 and 3, giving it an average rating of 3.5, and therefore we have 10 points for cinema, 10.5 points for Netflix. The true winners, I would say, are us.
Definitely, yes.
You like that? Cheesy enough for you? Was that inspirational?
Easy enough. Yeah. That's cool.
Was that inspirational enough, Sharon? Yay, the true winners are us. We all win.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, that's it.
All right,
really.
cool.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, that's it. Until next week, in which I am probably going to be complaining about how I can find nothing to watch at the View Cinema Reddit. Till next week, if I don't know if I'm going to keep this in for the audio only version of the podcast, but if you just wondered what the heck we just did, go find us on YouTube. Go find us on YouTube, and you can see the quiz there where Shaun was talking about and the picture that he has behind his head. And find us just same way, like, you know how we always like to give people a shout out when they pay us any attention whatsoever. Any attention whatsoever. We're like, oh, thank you for noticing us. So I'd like to say thank you to Ranta Monroe. Somebody who called Ranta Monroe has subscribed to us on YouTube. I think it might have been after listening to your People Just Do Nothing review, Shaun, and liked it, gave us a thumbs up, and then subscribe to us straight away. So thank you very much, Ranta Monroe, for joining us on YouTube. Tell your friends, get everybody else to join us. Yeah, get us a big following because we talk some good stuff. Anyway, until next week, when I will probably be ranting, as I said, about what cinemas I can't get into to watch anything. It's a goodbye from me.
We've got Dune and James Bond, haven't we? And it's a goodbye from me.
Ooh. Okay, we might have messed up the goodbyes, but for a good reason. I have heard some amazing things about Dune.
Ooh.
I had a friend who managed to go to a media screening of Dune.
Ooh.
He's seen it and he is itching to talk about it with somebody who's seen it. But he was like, I don't want to. In his words, he was like, I don't want to spoil anything for you, but you will not be disappointed. Is what he said. Is what he said about Dune. So yeah, I've heard some really, really good things about Dune.
Yeah,
so
excellent.
Alex, thanks for the heads up. And so Dune's out next week.
Yeah, right. That's out Friday, I think.
Okay, cool. Then that puts paid to my plan to read the book before I watch the film. But
yeah, I've not read the film. I've seen the David Lynch film, but I haven't read the book.
Yeah. I've got the audiobook somewhere, but I keep losing my place in it, so I can never finish it. But anyway, goodbye. We'll see you guys next week.
See you later.
Possibly with a Dune review.